Welcome to 2.2, which is talking about comparison problems. Now, make sure you have some paper in front of you and a pencil because these problems are going to require us to write some stuff down. We're going to be using models for these problems, and it's super important that we actually make models for these problems. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're even looking at here. Maria's dog weighs 6 times as much as her rabbit. Together, the pets weigh 56 pounds. What does Maria's dog weigh? Now, this type of problem is going to require that we draw a model. We can go into our problem and we can cross some things out. We have times as many as, which we know means multiplication. And together, they weigh 56 pounds. And we want to know what her dog weighs. The tricky part about these problems is we don't have all the information. We're missing a piece and we need to figure out what that missing piece is. I'm going to go ahead and draw something and I want you to copy this down into your notebooks. Now we have Maria's dog and her rabbit. The D represents her dog and the R represents her rabbit. Now she has 6 times. Her dog weighs 6 times as much as her rabbit, which is why I drew 6 boxes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times as much as her rabbit. All of these boxes, just like in our last lessons, represent the same amount. But we're not sure what that amount is. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to put n's in there. These are our missing values. This is the unknown value, n. Now, the total weight is 56 pounds. We need to figure out what does just her dog weigh. This is the part we're looking for. In order for us to find that part, though, we first need to find our missing value. So go ahead, take a second, and draw this in your notebooks. If you need more time, you can pause the video. We need to set up the equation to figure out what n is equal to. In order to do that, let's count all of the n's that we have, not just the dogs, but all of them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total n's. So the equation that we're going to set up is 7 times our missing value of n is equal to our total of 56 pounds. Here's our total of 56 pounds. Now we need to solve for our missing n. Before we do anything else, we need to figure out what n is equal to. So we need to think about our multiplication facts. 7 times what is equal to 56? I know that 7 times 8 is equal to 56. So I'm going to rewrite this to solve for n. My n is equal to 8 because I know that 7 times 8 is equal to 56. So what I'm going to do is go back into my diagram and I'm going to replace all of my n's with 8's. Okay, so all of my n's have been replaced with 8's. Now, the question that this problem was asking me was, what does Maria's dog weigh? That's what I need to find. I need to figure out how much her dog weighs, which is why I circled her dog to help remind me that's what I'm looking for. So let's solve that problem. Let's come up with an equation to solve for her dog. How many 8's do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 8's. So the equation that I can set up for her dog is her dog's weight 8 times 6. So here we have 8 times 6 for her dog's weight, and that's a fact that we need to know. 8 times 6 is equal to 48. So her dog weighs 48 pounds. Now that was a lot of steps that we needed to get to in order to get to her dog's weight, but this is what we're going to have to do to solve these problems. Let's look at some steps that we need to follow when we're solving these types of problems. Our first step in solving these types of problems is to draw a model. Our second step is to solve for our missing value. Often we're going to call this n. And our final step for solving these problems is to go back, reread, and actually solve the problem that the original question is asking us. Let's take a look at another problem. At the dog show, there are 4 times as many boxers as spaniels. If there are a total of 30 dogs, how many dogs are spaniels? We need to go and draw a model for this problem. We're going to be representing boxers as B and spaniels with an S, and there are 4 times as many boxers as spaniels. So we're going to have 4 boxes next to our boxers and only 1 box next to spaniels. This is what your model should look like. Now, it says there are a total of 30 dogs. So my total is going to go on my side. My bracket shows me there's a total of 30 dogs. How many dogs are spaniels? This is what ultimately I'm trying to find right here, is my spaniels. In order for me to do that though, I first need to solve for my missing variable, which is my n. In order to do that, I'm going to count the total number of boxes I have, or the total number of missing numbers. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 n's. So I'm going to set up my equation to solve for n. I have 5 times n, or 5 n's, are going to equal 30, which is my total dogs. Now, in order to solve for n, I need to think multiplication. 5 times what is going to give me 30? My n is going to be equal to 6 because 5 times 6 is equal to 30. I'm going to go back into my problem and I'm going to replace all of my n's with 6's. Now let me reread my problem. It says if there are a total of 30 dogs, how many dogs are spaniels? This is my number of spaniels. I don't have to take another step because right here by solving for n, I solved my problem. So there are 6 spaniels. And that's the answer to this problem. Again, I first had to set up my model. I then solved for n, and then I went back and looked at my problem one more time and solved my problem, which was asking how many dogs are spaniels. I want you to go ahead and try this next problem. The problem says there are 5 times as many yellow labs as terriers in the dog park. If there are a total of 18 dogs, how many dogs are terriers? Remember, the first step is to go ahead and set your problem up. There are 5 times as many yellow labs as terriers. So you should have 5 boxes next to yellow labs and only 1 box of terriers. And the total number of dogs is 18. Go ahead and set up your model and solve for terriers. When you set your model up, this is what it should have looked like. We have yellow labs and we have terriers. If you just used Y for yellow labs, that's fine, or just L, it doesn't matter. Now, our first step again was to set up our model. Our second step was to solve for n. When I count all of my n's, I have 6. So 6 times n is equal to 18. And when I solved for my n is equal to 3. I then should have gone back into my problem and replaced all of my n's with 3. My last step is to go and reread my problem and figure out what I'm solving for. If there are a total of 18 dogs, how many dogs are terriers? I'm going to go into my model and I'm going to circle what I'm looking for. I'm looking for terriers. Now, because there's only 1 box and I've already solved for the value in that box, my work is done. There are 3 terriers. And that's the answer to my problem. There are 3 terriers. Let's go and look at another one, and I'm going to have you solve this one as well. Now, I'm going to warn you, before you even get to this problem, there are multiple steps to solve the final answer of this problem. You need to go through the same basic steps, but then at the end, reread carefully and figure out what you really need to do to solve this problem. Let's read it. Carlita saw 5 times as many robins as cardinals while bird watching. So I'm going to cross out as many as, and I'm going to put my multiplication sign, and she saw 5 times as many robins as cardinals. So when I'm representing that in my model, I have 5 boxes for robins and 1 box for cardinals. She saw a total of 24 birds. That's going to be my total on my bracket off to the side. How many more robins did she see than cardinals? I want you to go ahead and set up your model, solve for your variable, go back and reread the question and see if you can solve for our final answer. This is what your model should have looked like. You have 5 boxes for robins and 1 box for cardinals, and you're solving for n. Because 24 is your total off to the side, you're going to count all of your n's, and you end up with 6. So 6 times n is equal to your total of 24. When you think about multiplication and solve for your n is equal to 4. So I'm going to go and replace that in my model. Now my last step is to go and reread my problem and solve for my final question. It says, how many more robins did she see than cardinals? When I see how many more, what do I have to do? I have to subtract. I need to subtract my total number of robins minus my total number of cardinals. So here's my robins, and I'm going to need to subtract my cardinals. So in this case, I'm going to circle both sides of my model because I need both sections. Now, I need to solve for my robins because I don't know how many robins I have yet. So in order to solve for my robins, I need to figure out how many 4s do I have. My 4 was my n. I have 5 4s. So if I have 5 4s, that's like 5 4s, 5 times 4. So for my robins, I have 20 of them. My cardinals I've already solved for. My cardinals over here is equal to 4. I need to subtract these two values to figure out how many more robins she saw than cardinals. So when I subtract 20 minus 4, I get 16. She saw 16 more robins than cardinals. This was a tricky problem because it had so many steps. Not only did I have to do my model, not only did I have to solve for n, but then I had to go back, I had to find the values of both sections, and I had to subtract because my problem was asking me how many more. When I did that, I got 16 more robins. Okay, here's your final problem to solve. Ben has 3 times as many guppies as goldfish. If he has a total of 20 fish, how many guppies does he have? 3 times as many guppies as goldfish. If he has a total of 20 fish, how many guppies does he have? Go ahead and draw your model and solve for this problem. Here's what your model should have looked like. You had 3 times as many GU for guppies than GO goldfish. When I add all of my total n's up, I have 4. So 4 times n is equal to 20. And when I solve for my n, I get 5. I'm going to go into my problem, into my model, and replace all of my n's with 5. And then I have to reread my problem. It asks how many guppies does he have. So I'm going to circle my section with guppies. And I'm going to add up all of those 5s, or I can multiply to find my guppies. 5 times 3. So my guppies is equal to 15. And that is the answer to this problem. All right, that is comparison problems with multiplication. We need to make sure that we read our problem, draw our model, solve for our missing variable. In this case, we're calling it n, and then go back to our problem and solve for what the problem's asking us to do. See you tomorrow.